As we now discussed, a specific instrument which allows us to raise additional funds and then actually fill the funding gap. There is also a very practical question, so how to develop a policy package which allows to set this on the European level, because as many of you may know, the discussion about new common funding on European level is always quite difficult. But what we actually see is that there is a very constructive space to move forward. So first of all, I think that it's important to note that this transition towards climate neutrality requires not only action on the supply side, but also the demand side, so also increasing development of circular economy. And if we actually look at how well governed these areas are currently at European level, and also what are requirements for member states, we can see significant gaps. So on one hand, we have quite robust requirements for member states to present a way how they want to achieve climate and energy targets in national energy and climate plans. And actually, the new drafts will need to be submitted by the end of this week. And they're very detailed in some areas, like emissions in general or energy sector, but they basically miss any details for industrial decarbonization pathways, which is very problematic for a longer-term perspective, as decarbonization of industry really affects all other parts of energy system. It creates demand for new types of energy sources. It also affects emission balance. So it's very important to make sure that we have a clear picture of where on national level, what are the plans to actually decarbonize industries. And on the other hand, and we had this discussion in different settings, whereas you can say two policy bubbles. One is working on climate energy and another is working on circular economy. It's also evident on the level of European Commission and European institutions. We have two packages, policy packages, which are quite cohesive, each of their own, but we don't have too many discussions on the connection between them. So circular economy action plan and Fit for 55 or broader climate energy set of regulations. And what we can actually see there is that there's no comparable framework, robust framework for governance for circular economy, which results in the fact that you have two major gaps, way in which European member states coordinate their activities related to decarbonizing basic material sector. So it's only natural that we should fill this gap. And this is also very fortunate in case of achieving European level deal on expanding funding, common European funding, because what we have seen in recent years is that combining this new funding with governance requirements, so stressing the need to introduce relevant reforms and plan investments from these funds is actually something which allows to make a final deal and compromise between countries which will be net receivers, but also which are interested in seeing EU level progress, which requires member state level policies. And we have seen this once with recovery funding. There were some difficult negotiations, but this aspect of recovery plans were added, and they are now being implemented, and even more so, they have been recently leveraged within the REPowerEU plan to actually update this reform and investment schedule. And we have recently seen it in the Social Climate Fund, which is tied to a new ETS system, which focuses mostly on buildings and transport, road transport. This is also something which implies transfer between countries and a common European framework for funding. but it also is tied to social climate plan. So member states presenting how they intend to use this money and how they want to make sure that this is consistent with their other activities related to, for instance, fighting energy poverty. So we can see that by introducing this new funding source, having European level action, but also tying this to governance in the area of industrial decarbonization and circular economy, we can see that this addresses the gaps and doesn't really overload member states with new commitments, which because we understand that this is something which sooner or later they would need to do any other way. If you could present the next and final slide, please. So to summarize, there's 3 principles for moving forward in this area. What first would be to still maintain a comprehensive approach to greening of European industry. So not only focusing on producing clean solutions, but also making sure that we do not forget about cleaning the production process, and remembering that circular economy is a crucial part of this broader task of decarbonizing the basic material sector. A second principle is that we should really mobilize financial resources on European level, but we can do this by closing the carbon pricing gap. So once again, utilizing what we still need to do. So that would mean that we avoid fragmentation of European industrial decarbonization efforts, something which was already mentioned by Timo. And we don't need to cause any sort of chaos in policy space, because what we will do is actually complementing what's already agreed, not opening the discussions once again. And the final one is this governance issue, which really leans in the winning formula from past years. And it also avoids this overlaps, which are now putting pressure on member states, so that they have to prepare quite a lot of planning documents. But as already discussed, this additional requirements for governance would actually address something which really is a sound investment in robust governance arrangement. And I think these are the main points from my side. So thank you very much.